be a part of. If we claim to be a Christian, then Christian history should be of great importance to us. So we want to read about it, learn about it, and go to a church that teaches us about it. But it doesn't seem to be much of a concern. Christians are very illiterate when it comes to church history. Most churches don't care. And you try to tell people that this needs to change, and they'll be like, yeah, okay. So what? And it drives me crazy. And I've also stated multiple times that we need to study church history because our ignorance of it does not negate its influence upon us. Ignorance of the past does not negate its influence on the present. There are things you believe as a Christian. There's ideas you have, and they directly come from certain individuals, certain times in church history, and those ideas became popular, and you believe them today, and you believe them not because you supposedly found them in the Bible. You believe them because you've been influenced by a way of thinking that can be traced back to a specific person and a specific time in the history of Christianity. And I've heard pastors stand from the pulpit and try to use things of church history, and they try to use it for their agenda. And you don't study church history for an agenda. The only I guess you could say, if you're going to study church history, the only agenda it should be is to know what happened, to know the truth of what happened. Not trying to go, let's study. People will do this with, St. Augustine. Oh, look, Augustine agrees with us. Look right here. Look here. And you're like, well, wait, did you read everything he said? Because I think there's probably some things there he doesn't agree with you on. So we'll use Augustine or use any church father when he agrees with us, throw them out when they don't agree with us. Why don't we just study the church father and just try to understand everything they thought? Well, here's an idea. Study one of their books in the church. Now, we started working on one of the very important books on hermeneutics by Augustine. We didn't get very far. We got distracted with other issues at our church. We will return to it. I had everyone get the book. Open the book and just read through the book as a church and then interject commentary and thoughts and challenges and questions in regards to it and explain it. But churches don't do this. So there is an ignorance of church history. This establishes the problem, all right? I want to make sure we establish the problem before we get to this article. You've got all kinds of people who don't know anything about church history. And whenever church history questions come up, it's just amazing. These people who rarely read church history, who rarely study church history, they all want to speak up as if they're pseudo-experts on this. No. They didn't believe, no one in Christianity believed this until this year. And, until whatever year they claim. And you're like, really? Well, here, this church father said this. Well, it didn't mean that. And you're like, just stop talking. You don't know, you don't know anything about the subject. And I think that, and to be honest with you, I don't know. No matter how much you study church history, it's hard to become an expert on church history because there's just so much to unpack. So we don't have to claim to be experts, but what we can claim is to be students of it and then try to get a grasp on it. So there's an ignorance of church history, which leads to a lot of problems. And here is the problem this article is not really trying to address, but it's definitely, I think it's aware of, all right? Let me read what they have to say here. Church fathers adore to Rome, all right? So we've established, at least in my opinion, there's a problem. Now, I will state this before we move on. That's one of the reasons on our VBC 66 app, I have an entire section on church history. I've dedicated an entire section on our church app for church history. And I'm posting stuff all the time about church history. Now, if I look at the numbers, yeah, most people who use our app, they don't use the church history section. Why? They don't care. Why not? I don't know. Because I guarantee you, get them into a question, start asking them some questions about church history, they won't like that feeling of not knowing, and you're providing all the information so that they can know, yet they don't use it. I'm telling you, it's right. I mean, there's enough information in our church history section right now that you could gain, you could increase your knowledge 200% from what you had, before you started listening. So I think it's important. I'm doing everything I can to fight this illiteracy, but to be honest, I have given up. I don't think most people care. Part of me sometimes wants to just delete the church history section and just say, let's put a section where we talk about, I don't know, friends and family and recipes. I could probably do a podcast on, recipes for grilling out and probably get more listeners than you can on a church history one. But I cry. All right, here we go. Let's go to this article. We're not going to be able to look at the whole thing, but we'll kind of see where they're going here, and I'll make some observations. Church Fathers, a door to Rome. Many people have walked into the Roman Catholic Church through the broad door of the Church Fathers. And this is a loud warning today when there is widespread attraction to the church fathers within evangelicalism. Now, I'm going to stop right here at just this paragraph. Oh boy. All right. Let's start with this. You probably would not have. Let's start with this. Okay, there are a lot of different ways to go with this. It is probably true. And in fact, I know it's to be true. If you watch on EWTN, the Catholic television network and radio network, they have a program. I think it's called The Journey Home. I believe it's called The Journey Home. And it's filled with conversion stories, right? Just like in the Protestant world, you'll have testimony. Like, here, give me your testimony, right? Well, this is basically the testimony of people who converted from Protestant faith and came to Catholicism. Now, it's also from people who came from atheism to Catholicism or from other religions as well. But there's a lot of stories of, I was a Protestant minister, I was a Protestant seminary professor, I was a Protestant whatever, and I became a Catholic. And over in their stories, it usually goes something like this. I started reading or studying the Church Fathers. And I ended up becoming a Catholic. All right. So it is true. I will agree with David Cloud is the author of this from Way of Life Literature. I do agree with him that it is a door that leads lots of people to Rome. The Church Fathers is a door that people will walk through, and they go. Here's the Church Fathers, and it leads them right through the door into the Roman Catholic Church. There is some truth to that. Now, I would ask why. Why is that? Well, there's a lot of reasons why, but let me go back to the problem I started with. Maybe if Christians had more understanding of what's in the Church Fathers, how to read the Church Fathers, how to handle the Church Fathers, they wouldn't be so shocked when they read the Church Fathers and they go, wait a minute, this doesn't sound like my Protestant church today. Wait a minute, they believe things that we don't seem to believe today. They would be prepared in how to handle that, but they're not prepared to handle that because the Protestant churches didn't teach them any church history, but there are some Christians out there who want to know things. I know it's a shock to some churches. There are some Christians. They may be small in number, but they actually care to learn. They actually care to study. They actually care to know the history of their faith. They actually care enough to talk about these things, to read about these things. They actually care enough to buy books. I know it's a shock, right? Because you think most Christians, well, they're just comfortable to come in, get a little sermon, have a little fellowship, and they're okay. Don't have to worry about them. But you do have to worry about those Christians who care a little bit. So here's what happens. They have no idea about what the Church Fathers taught. They hear something here or there, or maybe you mention them, Mr. Protestant minister, pastor. You mention the Church Fathers briefly in your sermon to quote something that will prove your point, and that Christian goes, never heard of Ignatius, or never heard of Irenaeus, or never heard of Athanasius, or never heard of Origen, or never heard of these individuals. Let me go look them up, because it is 2019. People do have the ability to, Google things. And they're like, let me start reading. Wait a minute. This this sounds very Catholic. Whoa, wait a minute. This goes against everything I've been taught. Wait a minute. And they're hit with a whole new world. It would be less impactful and shocking if they'd been taught about the church fathers from the very start of their journey in their Christian life. I think that's one of the reasons that it happens. And the only one, don't blame the church fathers. Blame the church today for keeping people in ignorance. Let me state it this way. Ignorance, okay, is the soil, right? Or how can I say this? Ignorance prepares the soil to plant deception, right? Ignorance, I think we can do it this way. Ignorance is the soil in which deception grows. There we go. Ignorance is the soil in which deception grows. Ignorance is the soil in which deception can be planted. Ignorance is the problem. These people, almost all of them, when you hear their testimonies, they're like, I didn't even know that the church fathers thought this. I didn't even know. And you're like, every time I listen, I want to scream at my television or my iPad if I'm listening to a podcast, and I want to scream, go, how did you not know? And I know why they didn't know, because their churches didn't care to teach it. And I know this, that whenever you teach the church fathers, you get some very negative reactions, because here's what happens. People are like, well, no. Don't be saying that. Don't say the church fathers taught. No. Don't make an argument for what they taught, because what they just want to hear is Christianity started in a Baptist church somewhere in Jerusalem, and it was the first Baptist church of Jerusalem, and all of them, and they wore suits and ties, and they had a piano and maybe an organ player. Her name was Miss Martha. She was 87 with purple hair, and they did church service just like us. They had an altar call, just as I am. They sang that, and people really and they all were holding, leather-bound Bibles, and it's like, whoa, slow down. People have the wrong impression of how the early church was, and then when they read about the early church, they're so shocked by it, they start thinking, well, wait a minute, why was it this way? And then that leads to many issues. So I think, many people have walked into the Roman Catholic Church through the broad door of the church fathers, and I would say, yes, they have. It's because of ignorance. Well, let me state it this way. That's at least one of the reasons, right? So he says there is a loud warning today when there is a widespread attraction to the church fathers within evangelicalism. And I'm going to disagree. There is not widespread attraction to the church fathers within evangelicalism. There is widespread attraction of cherry picking from the church fathers. They see the church fathers as a Golden Corral buffet. Right? Let's go. Oh, this looks good. They're not really interested in studying the church fathers. They're really interested in finding certain things from the church fathers. And I would ask you, why do you think there is widespread attraction to the church fathers within evangelicalism? Why is there such a widespread attraction to maybe want to go back to some of the things the church fathers said? Can I tell you why? Because the modern church is an absolute joke. It's a circus. It's all about fun, food, fellowship. It's the church today, in many cases, is so shallow that you could not drown a gnat in it. There is no substance. There's nothing. And so many people look and they're like, this is just like a social club with a little Jesus thrown in. This is like fun, food, and entertainment. It's so shallow. It's so crass, commercialized, corporate, template. There's nothing here. And I think many are longing for something deeper. They don't know where else to look, so they go back to the church fathers. Maybe they'll turn to the church fathers who are more on the mystical side of church history. they'll find something of great significance there. They may turn to something like contemplative prayer, because that was a part of it. They may turn to something like the Liturgy of the Hours, which a lot of Protestants have turned to, because they're looking for something of more substance than what they find. If you go pick up the Church Fathers,